If you want a crazy strong Arcanist build focused on the bow as your primary weapon, then this is the build for you. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HTM here. In this video, I'll explain a bow build for ESO's new Arcanist class with options for both solo and group play that's easy to set up and also extremely powerful. So if you're wondering if a bow Arcanist is any good in ESO, yeah, it's pretty good. So let me show you how to build one right now. All right, everybody, here we are back on the Arcanist, the very powerful build. It's going to be great for solo and group play. Our bow Arcanist, BOWCANIST, you decide what to call it. I'm not completely sure, but let's go ahead and jump into the buff stats here, check things out. Looking at the stat sheet, about 14k max magicka, 20k max health, 30k max stamina. Good stamina recovery here, 2500 is very helpful. 4600 weapon and spell damage, 60% crit chance, looking very good. Of course, you will want all of your points into stamina, this being a bow build. Dependent on those bow skills, that's the best way to go. In terms of the Mundus stone, I went with the Thief Mundus. I think that's going to be ideal for both solo and group play on this particular build to make your crit chance as high as possible. In terms of the buff food here, Lava Foot Soup is going to be ideal for the extra stamina recovery, as you saw. It helps us get a lot of sustain on this build, which is pretty helpful on the Arcanist, to be honest. Plus the extra max stamina is very good as well. In terms of your other consumables, any stamina potion is completely fine. Even the basic, trash stamina potions. Set up the build where those can work totally fine. Or you can use weapon power potions if you want. It's totally up to you. Even tri-stat potions, heroism potions. But if you want just the cheapest route, the basic stamina potion is completely fine. And then in terms of the race, a couple of good options. I think if you are more interested in like overland content, solo content, maybe basic 4-man dungeons, then Khajiit is really nice. It's a great way to go for this particular build. You get all the recoveries, which is very helpful on the Arcanist, since we're using both stamina and magicka skills. You also get boosts to all of your pools, health, magicka, and stamina, very nice. And the extra crit damage bonus and crit healing is very powerful. Now, if your goal is to eventually do more endgame content, then the crit damage buff here ends up being a little bit redundant because there is a crit damage cap in ESO. Most likely you will cap out on the Khajiit. So if that is your goal ultimately with this build, then something like Dark Elf would actually be preferable because you get more stamina, you get more max magicka, and you also get weapon and spell damage. So that would be another really nice option. That is the basic setup. Let's quickly go through the sets here. So for our first offensive 5-piece set, we're using Deadly Strike. You've probably seen this before on some of my other Arcanist builds because it is literally just that good. It's one of the best sets in the game for the Arcanist because it increases your damage over time, skills damage, and your channeled ability damage by 15%. This is going to affect pretty much everything in the Arcanist toolkit as well as all of our bow skills that we are using. It's going to buff our ultimates. So it is very, very powerful. So the way I've done this is I'm front barring it on the bow here. Precise bow with the absorb stamina enchant. That's going to count for 2 set pieces because it's a 2-handed weapon. And then just 3 pieces on the jewelry. So the deadly necklace, 2 deadly rings. Got bloodthirsty. If you can transmute those, it does result in a little bit of extra damage. Plus the weapon damage glyph there. Second 5-piece is super easy to pick up as well. That's going to be Order's Wrath on the body. We get tons of crit chance, crit damage, plus some extra weapon and spell damage. This is a really good flexible set. It is crafted, so it's easy to either craft this yourself or buy it from guild traders. And we're going with full medium on this, so we've got the medium Order's Wrath feet, medium legs, medium hands, medium waist, and then the medium chest, all max stamina enchants, all divines for the traits there. And then finally, I did decide to go with a monster set here that performs really well on bow builds. If you don't have this, you should definitely check this out. It's the Stormfist set, just a base game monster set. Very easy to pick up. But this is great for the Arcanist, especially with the stamina focus, because you get the extra stamina recovery and then 2 big damage procs, shock damage and physical damage. This scales with your weapon and spell damage, so when you're fully buffed, this does a great amount of DPS. And like I said, very easy to pick up. So all of this stuff is either base game or crafted gear. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. If you want more information about where to get these sets, make sure to check out the written guide. I'll have full details there, plus some alternate gear sets. If you don't have Deadly Strike, for example, there's other things that you can use that are not quite as good, but almost as good. So those will be in the written guide. Finally, this does leave your back bar pretty much free for any type of bow that you want. Now, if you have another deadly bow, yes, you can use that. And then you'll have the 5-piece bonus of deadly active on both of your skill bars. That's totally fine. Or what I've decided to go with is using an arena bow. You can use either the Master's bow or the Maelstrom bow since we're using both of those skills. This works off of Poison Injection. The Maelstrom bow works off of the Endless Hail skill. So either of those will be really nice. It's going to buff the damage that you get from using those two abilities. But the main thing here, make sure it's infused with weapon and spell damage enchant. That's going to be the ideal trait and the glyph for your back bar bow. So again, the setup here, deadly, bow and jewelry, Order's Wrath on the body with the Stormfist monster set, and then the back bar bow of your choice. Quickly here, let's jump to the skills. In our front bar, you can see we're using all Arcanist skills except for one, starting with Tentacular Dread. These all come from Herald of the Tome, by the way, which is great for our passives. So Tentacular Dread, what this does, this is a spender, which means you need to build up Crux to use this the most effectively. But if you do have 3 Crux built up, this is going to debuff your target. They're going to take 5% increased damage from you, plus an additional 2% per Crux that you spend. So 6 extra percent, 11% damage increase in total to your damaging abilities. So this is a really nice skill. This is amazing for group content. It's AoE. It also immobilizes enemies in front of you. You could go with the Stamina Morph as well, especially if you want to play completely solo, because that does come with a heal. That is a builder also, so that's going to build Crux rather than spend it. Next up is going to be our main offensive skill on the front bar. Pragmatic Fate Carver is the morph that I've gone with. This morph I've found just a lot better in most forms of content. The other morph is longer, so technically it does more damage. But I do like this one for the bow build because it's going to give us a nice damage shield. A huge shield, actually, which is great for protection. Plus, it is slightly shorter, making it basically easier to use this in rotation. It just felt better. It flowed better in the rotation. I definitely recommend this, but like I said, you can try the other morph for a little bit more damage if you want. And then we've got our main offensive buff here, Inspired Scholarship. It's the second to last skill in Herald of the Tome. This generates Crux if you have none. So this will always basically keep you at 1. Even when you spend your Crux, you'll automatically be bumped up to 1 Crux, which is important for Fate Carver. I didn't mention that if you're not familiar with the Arcanist, Fate Carver is a spender too, just like Tentacular Dread. So you want to make sure you're at 3 Crux stacks before you use your Fate Carver. And so like we said, one way to get there is Inspired Scholarship. That's going to give you 1 Crux automatically. It also gives you Major Brutality and Major Sorcery. That really frees up your potion options. Plus you get extra magic damage when you use your class ability, so this is a really great buff. But the way we're going to build up those other 2 Crux is going to be Writhing Rune Blades. That's the first skill from Herald of the Tome. This is a builder skill, meaning every time you use it, you're going to generate 1 Crux. You also get bonus weapon and spell critical based on your Crux, which is really nice. And then finally, just a passive skill here, Camouflage Hunter, comes from the Fighters Guild. It's going to give us some passive weapon and spell damage, plus Major Savagery and Prophecy. So that's bonus weapon and spell crit chance. Again, that frees up your potions to run basically anything you want, cheap potions if you want to, plus the Minor Berserk buff if you're fighting from behind or to the side. So make sure to position yourself correctly because that's an extra 5% damage just for having this skill slotted. And then lastly, the ultimate here is called the Languid Eye. This morph does the most damage, so I do recommend it, but it is placed on the ground, so you do have to worry a little bit about your placement. But the nice thing is you can actually reposition it by casting it again. So if the target dies early or it's moving, make sure you recast this to get some more damage out of it. So that's our front bar bow skills. Back bar bow skills is mostly damage over time and buffs and support. So here's where we have most of our bow abilities, starting with Poison Injection, our first skill here. This does a very nice damage over time plus execute damage. So this does ramp up the lower health your enemy is. And if you're using the Master's Bow like I was using, you will get bonus weapon and spell damage on top of that, which is great. And next up we have Endless Hail. This is the longer duration morph. This is going to be kind of nicer just to extend the rotation, but you could use the other morph if you are a bit quicker. A bar swapping, that should be great as well for a little bit of increased damage. The most important thing about this skill, though, is this is going to proc your back bar glyph. That extra weapon and spell damage, the infused glyph on your back bar, this is what keeps that active the whole time. So you want to make sure to keep this up and then recast it as it's fading. Next up is Razor Caltrops. This is a good all-around damage skill because it is AoE. This comes from the Assault skill line, but also this is very good for solo and small groups because of the Major Breach debuff. This is going to make all of your abilities, all of your group's abilities do more true damage because it's removing some of that enemy armor. So it is really helpful. The duration does look short, 10 seconds, but keep in mind the Major Breach effect here is 4 seconds long. So even though this expires at 10 seconds, you technically have Major Breach for about 14 seconds. So the rotation does line up really nicely with Endless Hail. And then a couple of flex spots here at the end. I've got Channeled Acceleration. Comes from Psijic Order. This is going to be really nice for making sure you get the Minor Force buff. That's 10% bonus critical damage. Really helpful. Plus it lasts 1 full minute. Means you don't have to recast that very often. And then the last buff here is really up to you. I have Reconstructive Domain here from the Curative Rune Form skill. This is a really nice buff for the Arcanist, especially if you're playing with a companion or a group, because it gives you a very solid heal over time. You can see there at the bottom. Plus all of your minor recoveries. So 15% health magicka and stamina recovery for anybody standing in the area. And then minor courage, 215 weapon and spell damage. Here's what it looks like. It's a pretty big area. So it is a really nice buff. If you're not worried about that so much, if you have other supports running in your group, then I would just backbar Camouflage Hunter again to make sure you have access to the passive buffs that provides. And then finally, Sanctum of the Abyssal Sea is just an emergency ultimate. Comes from the tank skill line for the Arcanist class. Huge damage shield. It also does damage to enemies in the area, so it's really helpful for more difficult content. Let me show you the quick rotation here, how it works. I've tried to keep it really simple. You're going to start with 2 buffs here. Channeled Acceleration, Inspired Scholarship, then our back bar dots. So Poison Injection, Endless Hail, Razor Caltrops. You're going to bar swap. Do your Rune Blades until you have 3 stacks, and then Tentacular Dread. Rune Blades again until you have 3 stacks, and then your Fate Carver. That's the basic rotation. Let me show you one more time. So here's our buff, Channeled Acceleration. Inspired Scholarship is your damage buff. Then your back bar dots, all 3 of those. Try to light attack in between of those. Our runes to get our Crux stacked up. Then Tentacular Dread. Runes again. Fate Carver. Now if you have your ultimate, you can use that right after Tentacular Dread. Something like this. And then go into Fate Carver. That'll give you the most damage burn as possible. But there you go. It's a very simple rotation. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Just try to keep up your buffs. The most important one is Inspired Scholarship. That's going to buff your damage by 20%. And then obviously the 3 Crux stacked version of Tentacular Dread. That's going to buff your damage by another 11%. So huge damage buffs possible on the Arcanist class. Let's talk champion points next, starting with the green tree. And as usual, you'll be able to find these broken down by 300, 600, 900, and 1200 champion points over in the written guide. Link for that, again, is in the description and the pinned comment down below. So for the green tree, these are pretty flexible, but I do usually start with Steed's Blessing for the extra movement speed, Treasure Hunter, Rationer, and then Liquid Efficiency. Over in the blue tree, what I would recommend for damage is going to be Biting Aura. This is going to buff your AoE effects. And then Thaumaturge for those damage over times. Fighting Finesse is going to add a little bit of extra critical damage and critical healing. And then finally, Wrathful Strikes. This is just a nice solid damage bonus to all of your offensive abilities. Finally, in the red tree, again, pretty simple. Rejuvenation is going to be very good for the recovery. Fortified for some extra armor. Boundless Vitality for the health. Then for sustain, I would recommend Bloody Renewal. It's going to give you stamina back at every kill. The last but not least, for the outfit style, if you are wondering about this, mostly for the body pieces here, Ivory Brigade in medium armor comes from Blackwood. And then for the helmet here, this is called Arcsand Armory. All right, everybody, and with that said, that's going to wrap up this Arcanist bow build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you guys enjoyed this one and found it informative. Of course, if you did, do me a favor and crush that like button. It absolutely helps out the channel, so that is much appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel further, make sure to check out our YouTube membership. You can click on the join button down below for more information on that. And if you have any questions on the build, make sure to check out the written guide. There'll be a link for that down in the description and the pinned comment below. Over there, we'll have the alternate gear sets that we talked about, some alternate skills, all the passives that you need to make this build work, plus a full CP breakdown for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 champion points. I may have a companion build over there on the written guide as well, so definitely check that out. But as usual, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.